I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic drew their plans against us.
All of a sudden, a stick out of nowhere landed right in front of us, and there was no tree, nothing overhead. Something threw it at us.
Yeah.
All things unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on All Things Unexplained. I am your host, CJ Derringer, and I have a very exciting episode for you. I am going to chat with the very talented author, Patricia Cornwell. Her books have sold over 100 million copies, and for good reason. She is so much fun to read. We're going to talk about everything from UFOs to artificial intelligence to alien abductions. And I can't wait for you to join us. The only way that we keep going at All Things Unexplained is thanks to listeners like you. So if you haven't yet, please do hit that subscribe button. Be sure to comment, like, and share. This is indeed a community where we can all talk together, learn from one another, and keep exploring the universe. All Things Unexplained is free to watch on YouTube and listen to wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to support our show, you can visit our YouTube store. Additionally, you can find us on Venmo under All Things Unexplained. Be sure to check out our website, allthingsunexplained.com. All proceeds from the sales of Dr. Mounce's books on Amazon and Audible also go straight to our show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Things Unexplained. I am so excited to have Patricia Cornwell joining us again on the All Things Unexplained podcast. Patricia, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be back. We had so much fun last time.
So much fun. And you gave us a little teaser about what was to come. And now here we are, two ladies talking about books and UFOs. Can't get much better than that. Yes. Well, before we get started, I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about what's going on in Western North Carolina. I live in North Carolina, and you grew up in part of North Carolina as well, correct?
I did. I grew up right outside of Asheville in this little town called Montreat. In fact, I tweeted a picture about this morning. Someone sent me a little snippet of a video that somebody took. I wish I could credit them, but I don't know who it was. Someone who took of the gate that led into my little town, and there's floodwaters coming out. And so I have family in Charlotte, but they're doing, where they are, they're okay.
Sure.
But it's mind boggling. I mean, it's like Katrina.
Right.
That far inland, you just don't think of a Category 4 hurricane. And I think everybody should be doing anything they can to be helpful
Yes.
to these folks, because we're not seeing as much on the national news about it as we should. And so, if people weren't sending me things off of Facebook, for example, I wouldn't know what's going on. But Asheville, I mean, I have family that's in Flat Rock, Hendersonville area. And while they fortunately are okay getting in and out, and I said, well, can they even get to the store? And they said, there is no store,
Yeah.
grocery stores, things just washed away.
Absolutely just devastated. And it's not just one town, it's so many towns. Everywhere I look, it seems to be a town has completely washed away. And so people have lost their lives, their homes, their livelihood, and it's not getting national news. My friends in California hadn't even heard of it. And I don't know if that's because everybody is cut off from technology. The word's not getting out in those areas. But if this is your first time and you're listening, hearing about it, please go do your research. And if it's within your means to help, please help.
I mean, for example, these poor people, even those that get into a shelter, they're most of them, they're not allowing pets because they can't manage all that. So how the hell are you supposed to leave your pet behind? So this is, and that's one of the things that we want to find out more about too, is what's going on with animal rescue,
Mm-hmm.
anything any of us can do.
Yeah.
This is not about religion. It's not about politics. Whatever the group is that is helping, you try to help those who are helping others. And that's what we should all be doing. Because this is, this, but it does. And I don't know. I'm like you. I don't understand why there's not more coverage, because I don't think it's just the technology, because there's plenty of videos out there that people are taking, and these should be on the evening news,
Mm-hmm.
like they were when Katrina hit. But we're so caught up in the election and all the
Yeah.
toxicity that's got to do with that we're not taking care of people anymore.
So toxic. You're right. And I'm really only getting my information from X, formerly Twitter. And I only recently joined X. And I can't believe how much information is coming from there that I'm receiving. And I'm not seeing it, like you said, on national news. So again, there's lots of people.
We're seeing very slanted everything these days.
Aren't we?
It's all propaganda, that's sometimes extraordinarily subtle, but it's there, and we're not getting an accurate representation of what's actually going on in the world. And the more we're seeing this, the more I'm understanding that if it's really true that there are a lot more UAP or UFO sightings these days, I'm sure our friends up there going, what the hell are you doing down there? You are ruining this experiment.
Yes, we sure seem to be.
This is not good.
Yes. Well, that's a perfect segue into your book. So your newest book is called Identity Unknown, and we will have a link for people to shop that book in this discussion here, because it is so good. I love to read. And by page 1, I knew I was going to love this. And by page 5, we're dropping information about UAPs and UFOs. And halfway through the book, there was a big surprise for me that we will get to in a little bit.
I know what that surprise is.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I even know what page it's on.
Well, I do too, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be, if it would stay that way as it actually came out and be published. But you know what? I'm just going to dive into it. I was sitting on my bed reading, and my daughter was having a hard time falling asleep. She had her head on my shoulder, and I was so into this book. And all of a sudden, it says, "I'm sure Marino got that information from All Things Unexplained or Ancient Aliens, his favorite podcast and television show." And I about fell off. I screamed. My daughter thought something was wrong, and I was so excited to tell her. And of course, she's young. She doesn't actually know the name of my podcast, so I had to fill her in. But so grateful to you.
I didn't know that either. But you know, after I was on your show last year, I thought I discovered that Marino and Dorothy, this is one of their guilty pleasures, is listening to you. And they do cheat on you and watch Ancient Aliens too. But
I love Ancient Aliens.
So, but yes. So I think page 130, is it 134 or something? But
it's 164 in my book, but
whatever it is, that might be right.
Yeah.
I know people think I know every page of my books, but I
How
don't.
could you?
But that, that was just being honest. I'm just telling you what they like, you know?
Well, thank you. I was so flattered to read that. But okay, so this new round of Scarpetta, we now are introducing UFOs, or UAPs as we call them now. What inspired you to go that route? And what are your readers who have followed Scarpetta for 30 years? What are they going to think?
Well, it's hard to know what the readers will think, but everything I do is rooted in fact and rooted in science. And if I'm going to show you something that may have to do with, unidentified anomalous phenomenon, or better known as, the new thing is UAP, which nobody can wrap their mind around, but we know what a UFO is.
Yeah.
But this whole notion of, are we alone? These strange reportings, and we see stuff on the internet every day, someone's latest video or an old video, and probably a lot of what we're seeing is fake or simply misidentification is a better one, because there's a lot of drones out there that are very strangely shaped that people don't know about. But there are also things out there that are behaving in ways that are reported by multiple people, and phenomena that's picked up by multiple sensors. So it's not just an artifact from radar, but all kinds of things reporting the same thing, of something that is going through the air that cannot be identified. And especially if it's behaving in ways that defy our technology. That's the big cue, because there's a lot of things in this book. There's an unidentified object that appears to have dropped somebody out, and that's the case that Scarpetta's got to respond to and do the autopsy on. And this thing was picked up by multiple sensors and radar. Something was out there. They don't know what it was, but suffice it to say, some things, there's a reason for it and it's explainable. Other things we can't explain. That's the name of your show. But we can't. And those could very well be something that's not from here. It's not made by us. And of course, it's all over the news these days that there are retrieval programs and reverse engineering going on. And it's been going on. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was just starting the research for this book, one of my most important consultants is a retired NASA scientist who's absolutely brilliant. And he deals with satellites and electromagnetic energy and is an engineer. And so when I get into the real esoteric things, this is who I talk to, right down to when there's this crop circle that's around the body, and right down to the science of how something like that could be formed, and making sure that which way something's turning when it happens, the rotation, all of that. This is the kind of stuff that we talk about. Well, so I made a trip to Tidewater because, as you know, there is a big scene at Langley Air Force Base, and also which is, by the way, is slammed next to NASA Langley, where I've spent an awful lot of time when I was doing the space thrillers that nobody wanted me to write, because nobody read them. But anyway, so I was doing a research trip, and I was with him, and he said, and we're talking about all this UFO stuff, NASA guy, don't forget. And he said, I want to show you something. So he took me to a museum on an Army base near there. It was just a museum that anybody can go, where they have a replica of a flying saucer. And he said, I want you to see this because this is something that the government made way long ago, because we were designing and have been designing flying saucers. Flying saucers are real. I mean, we've tried to engineer them, and including the one he was showing me. And they haven't flown all that successfully when we're making them. But here's the point that's important. Whatever gave us that idea? And why did that start after Roswell, when you started getting reports of flying saucers? And the other thing that's really fun, and I may have told you this on the last time we talked, and so forgive me if I repeat myself, but in this book, Identity Unknown, because it's about an unknown craft and whatever happened here, you have a scene where Scarpetta's remembering going to the National Museum of Health and Science, or what, I get the name mixed up, but it's the big pathology museum that used to be at Walter Reed. And she's remembering coming across something very strange deep down in storage, something that was misfiled, this huge file that's all taped up, and it's Roswell.
Yes.
And she gets in a world of trouble by drawing attention to it, because the person, the pathologist there, and people can read all that, but she's remembering how the encounter that she had and the curator's strange behavior when she discovered this file, and how what his explanation is, struck her as not true. Well, that's the same experience I had when I was in the storage area of this museum, and I was looking at this piece of skull and the bullet that killed Abraham Lincoln, because they have those specimens, those artifacts in that museum, along with all these other pathological displays of things like, limbs and spirits, as they call them, these big jars with a fluid and a preservation fluid. It may have been some kind of formaldehyde. I don't know what it was, but it would be limbs that were amputated on the battlefield during the Civil War. And it would show you what a bullet did, what a musket ball, or strange birth defects. I mean, it is a house of horrors in many ways, but very important specimens that are historical, like the Lincoln, or the skull and the bullet. Well, while I'm back in this private area, storage area, being shown this, holding them in my hand, I see a drawer over there. It's all taped up, and it has a big red label on it that says "Do not open." So I kind of drifted over that way, kind of stayed straight out of my lane for a minute. And I saw that the little label on it said Roswell.
So
And
this is real. This
this is
actually
real.
happened.
This is real. And so I pointed at it, and actually my partner Stacy was with me, so she witnessed this. She saw it too. And I pointed at it, and I looked at the curator and I went, and she just said, she kind of got a weird look on her face, like, uh-oh. It's like she probably didn't even think it was back there. She wasn't thinking about it. And she said, oh, well, that's just a joke. But the way she said it, it didn't seem like a joke. And she didn't invite me to open it and see if something funny was inside. And nothing about that place was a joke. Nothing.
Right.
It's a very serious, difficult place to go through. It's now moved. It's not there. But it's a different place now. But I don't know. That may have well been, maybe it was a joke, but maybe it wasn't. And then I remembered a story I heard when I was doing research with armed forces pathologists. And these are the medical examiners who work for the federal government. So when the Columbia Space Shuttle disintegrated, these are the medical examiners that get deployed to the field. They work for the armed forces. They do all of our military-related autopsies at Dover Air Force Base. If there's a case that's federal law enforcement, they will get involved. And so they get called to the weird stuff out there. And I was spending time with them, and this death investigator who worked for them, military death investigator, who was been there forever. And he was telling me a story. He said, I can't go into detail. He said, but trust me. He said, I was deployed out to the desert where I saw something in a hangar. And he said, all I can tell you is it was not normal.
Oh.
He said, I don't know what he said, it was not normal. And he said, I'm just saying that I've seen some things that just would not make sense to other people. And it flashed in my head when he was saying that he was talking about some kind of, perhaps something,
Sure.
non-human, because their biggest thing they work are aircraft crashes. That's what the Armed Force medical examiners, they're the ones that deal with military fatalities. So if you have some kind of weird aircraft crash, especially back in the day that this guy was talking about, you would have the feds, whether it's the National Traffic Safety people or the FBI or whatever, the Armed Force medical examiners. And so none of this is provable, but it's made my antenna go up. And then when I started doing the NASA research, and then in this book, I went to the Green Bank Telescope in the mountains of West Virginia. And, that is the biggest movable radio telescope in the world. It's about as high as the Statue of Liberty and about 100 feet wide. And this thing is tracking everything in the universe. It can tell you, it can hone in on some sort of nebula out there. And not only can it see it through what it's emitting, it's not seeing it optically. It's a radio telescope. It's the waves, the transmissions coming from it that tell you what it is. And so they can tell you that not only is this blah, blah, and it's shaped like this, but it's a cloud in that universe is made out of formaldehyde. That's a true story. I said, formaldehyde? I said, that must be the universe that Scarpetta's from. No wonder she looks so well preserved. No wonder she never gets any older. But this telescope, it's run by astronomers, all these brilliant people who are, when I was there, they were tracking the Voyager space probe as it was disappearing over the horizon. This thing is light years away, light years. I don't even know how many. And it just was crazy to me to see these people in their control room and they're tracking that thing out there. And so they're picking up on a lot of stuff. So I said to each one of them, do you think there's anything out there? I mean, are we all there is? And they said, oh, there's something out there. All right. Oh, absolutely. There's life out there. Everybody that I know that I've met who actually are dealing with the science of that, they either say there is, or they say the probability is extremely high. I mean, that's what the Drake equation is all about.
Right.
It statistically shows you mathematically that it's highly improbable statistically that we are the only life in this vast universe where there are thousands and thousands of planets, and we're discovering more all the time. Remember, when I grew up, there was only the ones in our solar system.
Right.
We couldn't see anything beyond that. Now we have telescopes out there like the Webb telescope, that thing, the farther out there it can see, it's picking up on stuff that happened billions of years ago that we're just now getting images of. I mean, pathetically, I mean, hypothetically and pathetically, because I think the Big Bang was not a happy story. I mean, it was a massive explosion, but hypothetically, we might be able to envision the Big Bang someday, because as the engineer of the Webb telescope described it, he said, "This is not a telescope. This is a time machine."
Wow.
And what we're seeing is the past.
Yes.
And to explain that to people, the reason we call it a light year, it takes a year for that to get to you, because for the light to travel to us. So if you got something 100 light years away, it's taken 100 years for that image to be visible to us. So the more light years away that we can see, the more we're rolling back time. What you're looking at is the past. And so when I began to realize that, all of this is mind-boggling. It's exciting, and I think it's crazy to think we're all there is. Let's hope not. How's that?
Yes.
That's what's pathetic. If we are all there is, we're Robinson Crusoe on a deserted island, and that's all.
Sad.
That's it.
Yeah. So many people want there to be more, which is why I get a little bit confused about why we would hide this information if it was real. But even Dorothy in your book, right? She says she wants it so badly to be true that there is life beyond us. She wants to believe that there's more to life than this mess that we have created. I think her language is more colorful than that, but she wants there to be something bigger than us to make sure we don't kill the entire planet, right? We are killing the planet and each other and destroying each other.
Well,
along the way.
a part of us that does not want this disclosed is a very primitive part of us that is completely power and fear driven.
Fear.
And the fear that there might be something more powerful than us. And it's okay if it's God, but why do you assume that God is so nice? If you're going to assume that God is safe, as opposed to maybe a higher order of being that has something to do with our existence, it might be our relatives. They may be our more immediate God if they have something to do with us here. But that doesn't mean there's not a God that created all of that too, whatever that would mean. But point is, just when you're talking about the flooding in North Carolina, I mean, who did that? If God is so perfect, why wasn't that stopped? And so the point is, we need to open our minds a little bit more about what a higher power is. And yes, I do absolutely believe there is something way beyond us. I just don't worry about the nomenclature of it, because nothing's perfect. And whatever made us, including God, it's clearly there are massive imperfections that we're trying to correct with science, technology, medicine. Why should someone be born unable to walk, or all these terrible things that happen? So we should be looking for the meaning of all of this. And my attitude about it is, I believe that something higher order than us is responsible for our creation. Now, maybe that's what you believe in the Bible, or maybe it's what Francis Crick, the Nobel Prize winner who created who discovered the model of DNA, the DNA molecule, won the Nobel Prize for that. And in the 1970s wrote a paper called Directed Panspermia, in which he theorizes that all of life on Earth was started by a, quote, higher society from another planet. And he bases that on the fact that all the DNA on this planet is almost identical and therefore comes from the same source. So you can pick what that source is. Is it a higher society from another planet? Is it a different dimension, some beings that are there? Is it God in heaven that you worship in church every Sunday? Whatever you want to think of it, I'm telling you, it's there. This is not. And I knew that after being in the morgue a very short time. I've seen so much death that I know that death and consciousness are two different. I mean, life and consciousness are two different things. The body and the consciousness, and death is not the end all. It's a translation and a crossing over into something else that probably when you get there, it all makes perfect sense. And your loved one really might be sitting right next to you and you don't know it, because we're dealing with different dimensions. There are more dimensions than just the ones we know, but we can't see everything.
Right. We have so much to learn. And if only we could have more faith in one another, right? We've had a lot of people who have had near-death experiences. maybe that'll be your next book. And they talk often about how death is not the end. It is certainly not the end. I am talking to Patricia Cornwell about her new book, Identity Unknown. I am your host, CJ Derringer. You can click the link in the comments to purchase her book. And we are diving into the world of UAPs and artificial intelligence and all sorts of fun things. Let's talk a little bit about this character, Sal, who comes into the book, because he is the cloth that weaves it all together for the UAP. I was reading this and I instantly thought of Avi Loeb.
Oh,
We're talking
yes.
about
Oh, I love
Oumuamua. We're talking about being kind
Oh,
of the
sure.
poster child for what might lie beyond. He is constantly looking for non-human intelligence. Did you work with him at all when you were
I
researching
did
this book?
not, but I'm reading his Interstellar right now, and
Good.
and I agree with everything he's saying. And I mean, I wish everybody would read Avi Loeb. I'm actually going to meet him very
I
soon,
know. I would
and
give
I'm looking.
anything to be there.
I wish we could, but again, his study of Oumuamua, the strange which is Hawaiian for scout, where we had this strange thing that came through our solar system that wasn't from our solar system, and by the time we saw it, there was too late to do any. I mean, there's nothing we could do to try to identify it. Couldn't send, a rocket there and
Right.
a capsule with something to get a sample of it. So it was kind of, but and if you read his book, because he's done the huge study on all this, is the thing is, it wasn't like your typical comet or asteroid.
Mm-mm.
And one of my NASA friends once said, if the perfect spaceship is a submarine, and I said, what? I said, a submarine? I said, you're in the wrong place, baby. They're not down here. And he said, no. He said, if you could launch a submarine into space, and once you get it out of gravity, he said, you were talking about the greatest vehicle, because it would go prowling through, the ether the same way it does the water. And its design is good for huge pressure and other things. And so he said that a long time ago to me. Well, what do you think Oumuamua looks like? It looks a lot
Right.
like what some people describe it as cigar
Mhm.
shape, but it does look a little bit like a submarine. And
Yeah.
so there's the hypothetical of, could that be some sort of craft that, not just some splintered off asteroid or a comet, because the thing didn't behave right either. It didn't act
Mhm.
like any of those things. And so Avi Loeb has studied that. And I think the questions that are raised, was it really just a comet off gassing that caused it to change direction and change its velocity? Or is it like a probe that's getting signals from somewhere? Well, by the time we knew about this thing, we couldn't we couldn't answer those questions, and then it was gone.
Right. Yeah, we were just relying on those heat signatures, and he was talking about how there was no cometary tail like a typical comet would have. So what is it? And those of us that want to believe there's more are willing to hear, but he really was met with a lot of pushback on
Oh,
his
I know.
theories.
Well, if you talk about this, and I bet you anything that I'll get some too. Somebody will make
Sure.
fun and say, "Oh yeah, well, she thinks she saw Jack the Ripper, but she also believes in Bigfoot and UFOs." And that people trivialize, they misstate. I'm not saying that I believe in anything, but what I absolutely accept is the very strong possibility that there are facts that would prove that these are true, but we don't have all those facts. But what we do have is an enough of a notion of it that we should treat these subjects with the utmost respect. Like, if you think Bigfoot might be real and you're going to go out and look for Bigfoot, be respectful of nature, and don't think you're going to go catch it or shoot it, or, I mean, be respectful, because you
Mhm.
don't know what the hell you're dealing with. If you see something in the sky that might be a UFO, be respectful. Don't go shining your laser pointer at it, because if you've ever heard an alien giggle, they'll be giggling if you do that. And then they might shine theirs back at you, and
Yikes.
bye-bye.
Don't
So,
mess with the aliens.
but I think I think we should, until something is absolutely proven not to be real. Remember, really magic is unexplained science. I
Mm,
don't believe there is anything that doesn't make sense. It's just that we either can't understand it or we don't understand it. And we
sure.
might someday. I mean, when you you can have a magnet powerful enough that something levitates, but that's not magic.
Right.
That's a magnet doing that.
Yeah.
There are physical reasons for it. And so we would like to have more proof of this, and maybe there is more proof. I mean, if you listen to people like Lou Elizondo
Hmm.
and others, then that who are very busy talking about this these days, that maybe there is truth, but we're having it withheld, and it has been withheld for reasons that we can circle back around to. Is the powers to be feel that your public can't handle it. Um, I think that's a foolish notion. I think truth is truth. And if
Yeah.
it's true, we should know about it because it might change the way we live. It actually might make us better people if we think that we aspire to a higher order of something. I mean, religion, that's one of the purposes of it. If you believe in something bigger and better than you, then you need to try to be a better person.
Right. And
And
you have hope.
so whether it's God or the saints or the others, as I call them, I know they're smarter than me, or
Mm.
they have to be, or we wouldn't be talking
Yeah.
about them.
Certainly smarter than me.
So,
Yes.
then we should be given any information there is, and then we should just deal with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the truth is out there, right? That's certainly been something people have been searching for a long, long time here. And you did some serious research for this book. We are talking about organizations such as Arrow and DARPA and the NSA and different observatories. Did you go to specific places to do research? Were you met by any pushback as you went?
Well, as I say, I've spent a fair amount of time at NASA Langley. I've been to, and the Air Force Base, their Langley Air Force Base, where I have a really big scene at a top secret area of the base.
Mhm.
Now, remember, I write fiction, so I will only tell you about um, some of what you'll see in there, particularly where she goes to do that autopsy.
Yes.
Um, I haven't actually seen anything quite like that, except in my head, but I'm gonna tell you that I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there aren't facilities like that out there,
Sure.
because somebody they're retrieving things, and whether there are explanations for it or not, they have to treat it differently than you're gonna treat, you know, a regular airplane that goes down. If you're not sure what it is at first, like when we took out that thing that was over in Alaska area,
Right.
and by the way, whatever happened, we never hear the aftermath of that,
Mhm, which they
uh,
claim they never found.
and so but I've been to places, for example, I know where the Chinese weather balloon is right now. I mean, I was pretty
Wow.
close to where that was not so long ago, but they know what that is. They know that's not a UFO, or at least we think so. Um, but it's, I went like I said, I went to see the telescope, the Green Bank
Mhm.
telescope, so I spent some time up around in there where the Wizard of Oz theme park would be.
Yes.
You know, but, it's I've been the more I've seen, the more it's made me less skeptical about all this, less. It's usually when you pursue facts, you become more skeptical of something if you start seeing a lot of evidence that it's baloney.
Mhm.
That's the opposite's happened to me. The more I look into this and the more I hear stories and the more I visit the highest tech facilities that you can imagine, some of which, are very secretive, the more I have a healthy respect that there is something out there. And I just wish we could have a more open dialogue with the public if that's true. If
Mhm.
we really have incontrovertible evidence that would show, particularly things taken a long time ago that just can't be faked and can't be drones.
Right.
Um, you know, that and the truth about Roswell, I mean, and we've heard about this particularly in imminent, Elizondo's new book,
Right.
which is really mind blowing. If those stories really are true and that Roswell really was basically a flying saucer crash, then we should see those pictures. We should know
Mhm.
about this, and we should try to understand how that changes our perspective on humanity and our life on this planet, and even the possibility that there might be something else living on this planet besides us that we don't know about. Like,
Sure.
know what's under the oceans. That's most of this planet, and we don't know what's under a lot of it because it's so deep.
So much of it, right? And you've spent some time in the ocean, lots of diving. Did you ever
Well, I
see
know
anything down
I
there?
don't go all that deep. I go deep enough that I see a lot of spare tires down there and Coke bottles.
It's depressing.
But if you're going down miles, I
Sure.
mean, we're beginning to get a better idea from sending cameras in these places. But I will also say that if there are some kind of bases, non-human bases on this planet, what under the water, for example, my guess is if they really don't want us seeing them or finding them, we're probably not going to, because to live that way, they have to be very different from us and probably extremely sophisticated.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of them. If they wanted to hurt us, they could have done that a long time ago.
Yeah, they're probably just watching us for now to see
Or
what
they're
we
probably
do.
trying to figure out whether they should beat a hasty retreat and go somewhere else.
Yes, as Neil deGrasse Tyson says, they came looking for intelligent life and didn't find any, so they
Well,
left.
that's about sums it up.
Okay, well, I have a few listener questions from you. You have such a dedicated following of people who love your books and love Scarpetta, and I want to bring some of these on here. This is more a comment, really, than a question. Kay Davis from Facebook, will you please keep Scarpetta alive? I started reading your books years ago, and now I'm rereading each one. Love everything you write.
Well, thank you. Well, I think Scarpetta will stay alive as long as I stay alive, but she might even stay alive longer because, and not the most pleasant subject, but there are a number of authors who aren't here anymore, but there are other people who write their books now, like Tom Clancy, for example. Now, and Agatha Christie, a better example.
Yes. Love
So, and
Agatha
I would not be so opposed to that down the road if someone does a good job of it. But in the meantime, I haven't been fired yet, so I'm still going to do it myself.
Yes, nice. And we are so glad that you do because they are wildly entertaining. So thank you. Okay, our next one, another fan from Facebook. This is from Aaron Longhire Snyder. Sorry, Aaron, I think I butchered that. Will Dr. Scarpetta and Captain Chase ever meet and work a case together?
Well, I think they did meet, and I think that they spent some time, and Scarpetta and Captain Chase like each other a great deal. But what Scarpetta said to Captain Chase is, I belong the main character in a series, and unfortunately you don't. Because but so that because that's kind of the truth. But anyway, I like to think in my fantasies they run into each other somewhere. They would get along extremely well because Captain Chase is a little bit like a NASA version of a Lucy. And
Yeah.
so and if there was that, I'd love to see them work a case. And I'm joking, but you never know.
Yeah, sure. Who knows what's going to come up next in this world that you need to write about, because you are very timely with the things that you share in your books in terms of current events. And last listener question here from Mary Lassen Snyder. How do you come up with your story ideas?
Well, I always start with the same thing. I've kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, but I start with what fills me full of wonder, because it's different. It's different than it used to be when I was getting started in my career. What would fill me full of wonder back then was a certain type of forensic science that nobody knew about. Like when I wrote Point of Origin, I thought it was because I thought I want to show people forensic fire investigation because nobody knows about it. Or I want to show somebody about a strange disease called hypertrichosis that makes you look like a werewolf that I dealt with in Black Notice. And so what fills me full of wonder now isn't necessarily new forensic science innovations, because there aren't that many new forensic science innovations. DNA is getting more sensitive, but there are new technologies, and any technology can be used forensically. I mean, that just means you're using it to solve a crime. You're using it to answer a question that's a legal question. That's what forensics really mean. So when I'm going to start a book like now, that what filled me full of wonder was the whole notion of these UAPs or UFOs, because they've been all over the news. And I started thinking, I wonder what Scarpetta would do if she had something that looked like that. That she has a body out in the middle of nowhere that looks like it's dropped from the air. There's a crop circle around it, and the person appears to have radiation exposure. And worse than that, the guy's an astrophysicist who's famous for trying to make contact with non-human intelligence. He's been trying with the SETI people. He's involved with all that. And when lo and behold, this is how we find him dead. And then you add to that, it's someone Scarpetta has a lot of feelings about, someone he knows very well. So I thought I want to jump into that and see where it goes. And I will, of course, there has to be a scientific explanation for everything you see. And I will tell you, just so you don't get even more frightened of the others, the aliens, the ETs, they don't do anything bad. They're perfectly fine and well behaved. The ones that I might have been flirting around with in this story. There's other things that are very bad that you
Yes.
about. But
Humans.
what we fear is right before us, and that is us.
That's what I fear. That's for sure. Now, where do you fall on this concept? Because in your book, you bring up there's a UAP that drops this body, right? And Lucy instantly, nope, there's a logical explanation. Scarpetta, well, it's possible. I'm not going to say it's not possible. And Marino, head first. Yes.
Oh, he's
aliens.
in.
I'm saying it's aliens. Do you find yourself, Patricia Cornwell, falling in line with Scarpetta here? Are you more like Marino? You want it to be true? Or like Lucy, there's a logical explanation for everything?
Well, I think I'd fall in line more with Scarpetta, which is she would look for the logical explanation, but she's suspicious because, like me, as she says, it's humans that drag death to my door, that bring death to my door. It's not extraterrestrials who are bringing bodies to her door every single day. So I'm not saying that's never happened or couldn't happen, because I don't know. But that's not what I walk around feeling afraid of, and nor does she. Lucy would be real quick to dismiss the possibility of it because she's going to look at all the facts first. But if you give her information, she'd change her mind in a heartbeat. And furthermore, if she ends up on the mothership, she'd look around and say, yeah. You know what? I kind of like your cockpit. That's a whole lot better than the helicopter I fly. And can you show me where's the joystick on this thing?
Yes.
Stick.
Digging the technology on that craft, right? Yes. She's so hyper aware of new technology. Every time I read one of your books, I'm like, oh, is that real? Am I this
But
far behind?
Marino would run. He would run at first. He'd be all in to see it, but then he'd get scared, and then he would be sure. Then he would say, "Wait a minute," and then he'd turn around and confront him, and he'd say, "Why are you killing all our cows? Why are you going after our livestock?" And they say, "It's not us doing that. We didn't do it. Have you looked at the environmentalists who are angry lately? Maybe them. I don't know, but we didn't do it." So, but it would be funny to see. Like people describing the elephant, what are they going to do if the spaceship is right there? What will all of them say? Each will say something different.
Yes. Well, once again, you did a lovely job in your book of building suspense and keeping everything current. It's fantastic. Go pick up your copy of Identity Unknown. I've got a few hot takes for you if we've got a few more minutes for me. I just want to get your opinion on some of these UAP alien related topics. So the first one, and this is so poignant for Scarpetta, is alien autopsies. This is something that we've had people on our show to talk about. Do you think there's a chance there have been some alien autopsies performed? And would Scarpetta want to do one?
I think that if there have been any remains found that are associated with crashes of vehicles that we cannot explain, and remains that do not, clearly are not human, I feel certain that forensic pathological examinations, very, very thorough ones, would have been done and probably conducted by the military forensic pathologists. And I would also say that there would be specimens that have been preserved. There's no way they'd get rid of something like that. And would Scarpetta want to do it? Yes, she would. And I'll tell you why. Not only would she be insanely curious, but she would want to understand. She'd feel sad. She'd feel sad for whoever these beings are that have had this happen.
Right.
And she would want to be the one to take care of them and to do the right job and to help us understand better. First of all, were they really a sentient being, or was this some kind of probe? Because look at Boston Dynamics and the robots they're creating. I mean,
Right.
we're going to eventually have a lot of things that are done by robots that were people, and including perhaps exploring. I mean, we have probes up on planets that are doing the exploration instead of humans. If you had something living there that discovered that, they might think that's what we look like, that we look like something with tractor
True.
wheels or whatever. But yes, she would, out of
Yeah.
respect, because
Yeah.
if there is something, if there really are these extraterrestrials or something else here that's not us, we should be treating those beings with respect, and just like we want them to treat us with respect. Because and I think it's, we're going to, if this is real, we're going to know more about it soon. I think we're going to be learning more and more, and I hope people will accept it with an open mind and actually an open heart, and not assume that something's here to do something terrible to us. Maybe quite the opposite. Maybe it's here to save us from ourselves. And
Right.
that includes artificial intelligence.
Yes. Yeah. And I do feel like the future of humanity is some sort of blend of human and artificial intelligence. I think Lucy's already on that cusp. Okay, one thing you mentioned a little bit already, different dimensions. What are your takes on the possibility of different dimensions?
Oh, I think that's a good possibility. Simply, for the very simple reason that our perception is limited. We see what we see, but we can't perceive anything beyond it, because that's the only sensors we have that work. And if there are more than 4 dimensions, if there are 5 or 6 or 11 or 17 or whatever number I've heard, then it doesn't mean we can see them. So we don't see the signals moving through the room right now. Like, you point your
Right.
remote control at the TV, you don't see that infrared beam unless you've got special glasses on. And so, but it's there. And so there could be many things that are there that we're not seeing. And that might also have a lot to do with the afterlife, which is that when your consciousness is not trapped in this very imperfect vehicle that's our bodies, when our shelf life is up and our consciousness leaves, and it looks like a light bulb burned out when the person's on the table, and they haven't been dead long, and they look just like their picture, but there's something, the energy is completely gone. And you go, where'd it go? Well, maybe it's not very far away. Maybe it's in a different dimension, like a house of mirrors. You see 1,000 different replicas of yourself. And when one mirror is broken, it's empty. If that's the only mirror you see, then you go, oh no, he's gone. It's gone. And he's like, no, he's not. He's all around you. There. And so I kind of feel this might be a little bit what we're dealing with. I think the mirror gets broken, but there's so many of them. And our loved ones are all around us. And if you have an open mind, I think you can sometimes get hints from these other dimensions, and they do it with through electricity. And I don't mean just electrical things where the lights flicker, or the sound goes on and goes off, and weird things. I mean, even animals, we all have a little bit of electricity.
Right.
And I've had a lot of people who lose somebody, and then suddenly a bird starts paying a lot of attention to them, pecking on their window all the time, doing this, doing that. And it's weird. And it's like, but maybe not. Maybe that's somebody sending you a message through something that's conductive.
Yes, absolutely. All right. We have about reached our time here, and I want to be respectful of your time because I know you're a busy woman, but we have one big announcement for you, and that's about Amazon picking up Scarpetta as a series. Give us a little brief take on that.
Well, it's very exciting. Jamie Lee Curtis is responsible for all this. We're friends, and 4 years ago, she decided to go into production, and she said, what about Scarpetta? And I said, well, as fate would have it, she is out of option right now. And frankly, feeling rather much out of luck, because this has been forever. Nothing's ever happened. And been umpteen efforts, always failed.
Really?
Yes, including with some of the biggest talents out there. It always fell apart in the writing stage, really. But these options with studio after studio after studio. And so I said, Scarpetta, well, so she took the ball and ran with it. And now here we are. So she's playing Dorothy. And by the way, when I write about Dorothy, now when you read about Dorothy in Identity Unknown, I just will confess it. I kept seeing Jamie in my head. I see
Yeah.
Jamie in the onesie,
I love
you
the
know, and I
onesie.
think Dorothy's becoming a whole lot more fun because I see Jamie.
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman is playing Scarpetta, and I
Yes.
think that's going to be awesome. And she's circled this project before. I mean, I've heard her name in association with it for actually decades, as a candidate for playing the role, but the films never got off the ground, so there was never
Mhm.
anybody cast in it. So Bobby Cannavale is playing Marino, which will be awesome. But anyway, it's a television. They're a television series called Scarpetta. They're starting to film next month, and it's set.
Wow.
So they're filming in Nashville, and this will be on TV in 2025. And it's Amazon. They've ordered 2 seasons to start with, and I say to start with because I'm hoping this is going to run for a long time.
I think so. I think you've got a big following who is really excited for this, and I know I will be watching. And can we expect another book out in 2025?
Well, and we'll have yet something else to talk about. 'Cause guess what I'm exploring now?
Tell me.
Ghosts.
I was going to ask if that was next on the list.
I am
Yay.
exploring ghosts, and not only what people think they are, but scientific reasons that you might see one that would absolutely, as my mother used to say, scare the liver out of you.
It would scare me, though. I think I've had some ghost encounters. So we will talk about that next year when that comes out. Once again, go pick up a copy of Identity Unknown. We will leave a link in the chat there. Patricia, I need to buy a signed copy from you since All Things Unexplained is mentioned in your book. So we got to work on
If
that.
you will give me your shipping address, I can
Yeah.
make sure you get a signed
I
copy.
would
And if
love
you
that.
and everybody and anybody else that you work with on your show, if you'd like a book,
Thank you.
please just get a list, and I
Okay.
will send you that and maybe a little swag while I'm at it. I
So
have
grateful
I
for
have other
that.
swag. We now have a little bit of Scarpetta, some
I
little
see you're wearing you've got your shirt on there. That's the Scarpetta
Yes.
symbol, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful.
So anyway,
Awesome.
yes, get that to whoever whoever you're, uh, you have a contact. I mean, whoever you were
Yeah.
talking to deal
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah,
Kelly,
to deal with you. Yeah, absolutely. Well, good luck to you
and
in promoting
don't be
this.
shy. If you want anybody to have a book because this would make them proud that they're mentioned in it, you just give me your list.
Thank you so
Okay,
much,
I know
Patricia.
where to get books.
Yes, appreciate it and appreciate you for your time. And we cannot wait to see what comes next for you and Scarpetta. And
By the
we'll
way,
have you on again.
if you ever want a book that you give away on your show or something that's
Sure,
helpful,
we would
all you have
love
to do
that.
all you have to do is ask. I'll send you when
Okay.
you give me your list. I'll send you a few that are just signed. Then you
Wonderful.
can do what you want to with them.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Great. Well, until next time, thank you, Patricia. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, and stay safe and stay well.
Yes, will do.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
All Things Unexplained.
What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you
Okay.
want it about
Yes,
the Alaska.
we do.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor was revealed to be the chief scientist of the UAP task force with the Pentagon.
So some of that, I think, sir, will save for closed session.